Good afternoon. As Aaron said, my name is Tania Chapman and I am a 2014 Nuffield Scholar and a citrus grower from far northwest Victoria, Mildura. Huge thanks and appreciation must first and foremost go to my family. They truly are the ones that are left behind to cope in the long hours, days, weeks that I was away as a Nuffield Scholar. They don't just have to pick up the slack on the business side, they also have to fill a huge void in the family. To Nuffield, thanks for seeing in me the ability to represent the Nuffield brand, my business, my industry, my country on an international front. Huge thanks must go to Rabobank. Rabo was founded on agriculture, and they're truly, the way they embrace the whole Nuffield program allows us to ensure that Australian agriculture is being spread to the world as well as we learn. You know, to me, the Nuffield journey isn't just about learning, it's also about teaching. Giving is a part of the journey. Even though citrus is the largest single fresh produce exported out of Australia, it is not without its issues and its barriers. We face huge competition from a whole host of countries around the globe. We've worked hard to build a strong reputation based on clean, green, safe product. We have to constantly identify new, innovative ways to ensure that our industry remains sustainable. We have to compare how and where our industry costs differ to our international competitors and how can we address those. We need to identify the competitive advantages we have in our markets, constantly look for new ones because our competitors are constantly on the improve. And we need to identify market or production gaps that can or will make a difference to try and increase our competitiveness. Australia's diverse climate is perfect for producing a range of sweet, safe, healthy citrus. The wide range of climate also allows for us to have a long distance citrus season. Commercial citrus production occurs in every state except Tasmania, and most of that production occurs in dry inland valleys with rainfall typically between 250 and 500 millimetres. This microclimate in these regions also allow for those positive attributes in our citrus. Perfect rind colour, the amazing taste, juice, and they also ensure that we have very little skin blemish from either pests or disease. The Australian citrus industry has the highest costs of production anywhere in the world, including labour, land, other capital items such as trees. In Chile, we see here that trees are $5, but you may only pay $3 if you order more than 1,000, whereas in Australia, my basic tree is $15. If I aim for a private variety, it could be as high as $25. I still recall standing in an orchard in Cuevilla in Chile, having a conversation with a citrus grower, and he was complaining bitterly that his hourly wage rate was going from $2.50 to $3 an hour. There was not much compassion on my behalf, I can tell you. South Africa produces around 6 times the volume of fruit for export that we do, but yet they can still land a carton in Shanghai for half the cost that I can. But knowing we cannot compete on price alone has made our industry focus on a niche market, on achieving high quality fruit rather than high volume, and ensuring that we put premium priced, premium produce on every market. Many times the question is asked, citrus is the largest fresh fruit produce exported out of Australia, yet you're continuously fighting for market access to move further up the queue. You're still focused on R&D. Why? Well, yes, we have taken opportunities in the export sphere and capitalised on them, but it doesn't mean the amount of support we need from industry bodies or government is less. In fact, it is more because our risk is far greater. Our industry has committed to export by the plantings, so we need to ensure that our export market stays open and that we remain within the protocols. Any interruption to our export trade has a massive effect on our domestic trade. We have a saying in our pack house, the tree pays for everything. The interest, the tractor, the fertiliser, the chemicals, the water, the list goes on and on. So we have to ensure that at the end of every tree, one of those oranges will pay to feed my family. One of those oranges will pay to allow me to reinvest in technology or into new varieties to ensure that we're meeting consumer preferences. Many decades ago, our first varieties came from Japan, and we hold the Japanese citrus industry in high regard. Their attention to quality, their emphasis on ensuring that the perfect fruit reaches consumer. But getting into more varieties out of Japan is not as easy as it once was. Varieties that are either bred or discovered in prefectures are registered to that prefecture. So even if you live next door, you cannot get them. So getting them into Australia, into internationally, is a really big ask. What I'm very pleased to say is that since my trip to Japan, we've actually started negotiations for 4 of those varieties. The Unshu and the Mikan varieties are mandarins and have a global reputation for their flavour, for their quality. So they will be perfect for us to put back into the Japanese market, which is currently the largest export market that we have. Spain, rightfully considered one of the most successful and technically advanced in the world. It was an amazing opportunity to be able to travel through Spain with the only person in the world that has a master's in citrus. A cornerstone of the success of the Spanish industry is the high health tree scheme that they have. The 2 components is ensuring that disease-free budwood is used on all of their propagation, and also that the nursery industry is regulated, giving uniform trees each and every time. Since the start of this program in 1982, 140 million trees have been planted. That is 97% of the plantings in the ground. In Australia, we have an amazing budwood scheme, but we don't have, and we're not ever likely to have, the regulated nursery industry. The other thing that really does determine the tree is the rootstock. There has been debate ongoing about vigorous rootstocks versus dwarfing. Vigorous rootstocks will give you very high yields in a very short time, great packouts. But what that will also mean is that you run the risk of fruit that is rougher in texture, that doesn't have the right flavour and doesn't have the juice content, versus dwarfing trees, which are smaller, much easier to manage, require far less thinning and pruning. We always have to be aware of our costs. We are so high in that. But the dwarf rootstocks also ensure that we have the thinner skin, as well as the much better flavour and the much better colour. Packhouse technology in Spain, it's absolutely amazing. The introduction of machines that can measure bricks is slowly filtering into Australia, but the ability to measure the acid of the fruit is really new technology. What we need to do is ensure that every piece of citrus we put on the market to the consumer is that perfect piece of citrus with that flavour. We know that if they get a wrong piece, it's 6 to 8 weeks before they will return to buy another piece. For some growers, that's their entire season. It was very evident in my travels that in almost every country, governments fight really hard for their ag sectors. In the US, the fight to overcome Huanglongbing, or HLB, and the Asian citrus psyllid, or ACP, is huge. Industry collects around $5 million a year to put towards that fight. Government puts in about $35 million per year. Just to quantify that, in Australia, in the citrus industry, we collect about $1 million for total R&D. Since 2005, we in Australia have watched with great alertness what's happening with Huanglongbing and ACP. In Florida, their production has gone from 244 million 40-kilo cartons down to half. So California, learning from their mistakes, learning from the lessons that were out there about how to try and take control of something that there is no cure for, worked hard with their government agencies, but industry made the decision that they had to be the ones that drive the outcomes. They can't sit back and let government do it. Since my trip and a subsequent industry tour over to the US, We have put in place in all of our major regions trapping, because when Huanglong Bing hits, you may not know for 4 years. That's how long it will take to show up in the tree. So we need to know when the psyllid's here, because the disease can't transfer through orchards without the psyllid. Chile, Ag is definitely at the forefront of their government. They are constantly at the table of their trading partners trying to get greater access, and they need to ensure that their produce has a home, to ensure that their farmers remain viable, to ensure that their workers have jobs. Chile was the only place that I went to that actually has a minimum percentage of local workers that must be engaged, and it's like 96%, so it's very high. 80% of Chile's exports go to the US, so they're very aware of this heavy reliance. So they are really trying to get their government to focus on getting access into other markets, our markets, such as China. Chile's cost of production is far less than ours, and as such are a huge competitor for us. And I know they are on cost, but I have to tell you, when I think about all of the safety issues and the food issues that I have to deal with, ensuring that I have no MRL problems, I stand there on a hillside in Chile, he's got a backpack on, spraying chemical on his trees to try and, control Fuller's rose weevil, and the whole time I'm thinking, how does he know that that is going to get through an MRL test on the other side of the world? Australia is not the only country focused on the Asian fruit bowl. Every export country in the world has them in their sights, and why wouldn't they? There are more people living inside that circle than there are on the outside. So we have to focus not only on premium quality product, we have to deliver what the consumers in those countries want. And that comes back to the right rootstocks, the right varieties. Australia's export markets in Asia and elsewhere are extremely taste sensitive. Any reduction in fruit quality could easily take us from the premium end of the market all the way down to the low priced end. Partnerships between government and industry are vital for increasing trade and strengthening relationships, not just between industry and government, but between our trading partner countries. Having gained a greater understanding of market opportunities in Japan, Korea, China, we now have to work closer with our government to capitalise on the opportunities. As tariff decreases and FTAs come into force, these countries will utilise other ways, non-tariff barriers, in order to restrict trade to protect their own industries. So we have to ensure that we meet those strict priorities, those strict protocols that they put in place. And all of our market access negotiations have to be based on sound business cases in industry export strategy plans, ensuring that we have the most efficient use of resources possible. In my travels, I wonder, have I created more questions for myself than I have answered? Maybe, but I now have a much clearer understanding of how our markets operate, how our fruit is perceived around the world, what are the opportunities, the threats that face us. Knowledge is power, and having robust market intelligence systems is a must if we are to compete globally. We can and must do better. We, and by we, I mean growers, industry, our supply chain and our government. We need to work closer to gain the outcomes and the benefits that await from ensuring that sweet, safe, high quality, amazing tasting Australian citrus gets to as many global consumers as possible. Thank you.